guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Giants Beastman. So Beastman here is the fourth and final figure, as we know of Mattel's new jumbo-sized vintage Masters of the Universe action figures. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. Now, as you can see, the figure comes on this very cool, oversized vintage blister card packaging, featuring that fantastic exploding red rock background with the blue sky, the classic Masters of the Universe logo at the top. Everything about this is very similar to those old vintage packages. Even got the little dimple there in the blister bubble, the shape of it, the way the figure's packaged on the inside. You'll notice Beastman even does have his armor off on the inside of the blister bubble. It's a very cool looking package, nice and sturdy, and definitely one of the coolest things about these guys. I've always been a huge fan of that vintage Masters of the Universe box. Still to this day, the best looking packaging for any Masters of the Universe figure. So I think it's pretty cool seeing it blown up in this jumbo size. Now when you flip that box around to the back side, we got ourselves sort of like a little makeshift 8-back, not quite an 8-back, but it does feature some of that vintage artwork showing off some other characters that were released in the Masters of the Universe line. Now, it's not exactly the same as that vintage 8-back because Mattel did say that they actually don't have access, or they lost access to some of those original pieces of artwork like He-Man and Skeletor, some of the ones that are missing off the back there, but they replaced them with some other ones and just kind of made this like an homage to the vintage 8-back, or just the cross-sell art on the back of the packages. So, very cool display piece, definitely, all the way around. I do really love this packaging, but if you've already seen my review of any of the other Giant figures, you already know what my complaint is with this. I'm still going to bring it up again just in case this is anybody's first video of mine on these that they're watching. The one thing I don't like about this jumbo packaging is the fact that there's no way to take the figure out of it without damaging it. Now, the reason I bring that up is because there's another line of jumbo figures out there, the Star Wars jumbo figures, put out by Gentle Giant, and one of the things that they did with theirs is they created this old Kenner Star Wars packaging, but they put it in this very cool clamshell that's got the nice little hang tags and everything on it, so you can hang it up, display it on your wall, but if you want to, you've got the ability to open this up, remove the figure, play with it if you want to, then put it back in this box, and you can still display it like this without any harm done to the packaging. I really feel like that would have been the right route to go with the Mattel packaging, but you can't do that. You actually will have to peel this blister off or cut this blister off if you want to remove the figure, which damages the packaging. And the prices that these figures are at, I really think we should have had the option to keep these figures on the card or open them and go back and forth if we wanted to. At this rate, I think a lot of people are going to probably prefer to keep them on the packaging, so that way they don't ruin this very cool vintage look. But since this is a review, I'm going to open this thing up and we're going to take a closer look at the figure inside. Alright, so we've got our giant-sized Beastman figure outside of the packaging. Let's take a closer look at him. Now, like I stated, the armor is off of the figure when you first remove him from the box. It's a little poly-bagged piece. It's very easy to fit on the figure, and it works just like the classic one. You just fit it over his head. He's got the little harness that just kind of fastens together on the back, and he's ready to go. You'll also notice he does have the little extra armor pieces on his arms. Very easy just to kind of slide off, and they just kind of fit right there around his bicep. You can also unclip them and everything. They function very much like the vintage action figure. Overall, the sculpt of this guy is really nicely done. Now, of course, he does share parts with Stratos, which is one of the other figures that we already got. So a lot of what we see here we already saw with him, such as kind of like the furry torso piece. You know, the longer looking kind of furrier arms, got the little claw thing on the back of the hand there. And then, of course, you got those same feet. And just like we saw with Stratos, it does have more pronounced toes on the sculpt than the vintage Beastman figure did. The vintage Beastman figure did have little toes, but they weren't quite as pronounced as the sculpt on this. So that's one thing that I've really kind of been noticing with all the Giant figures. I'm not entirely sure how Mattel went about these, because it doesn't look like these are necessarily scans of the vintage action figures blown up. Maybe they were scans of the commemorative figures. I think that was kind of what a lot of people were thinking with the He-Man and why the head sculpt looks so much different on that one. But overall, the sculpt on Beastman looks pretty great. In fact, I think this might be my favorite one of the ones I've looked at so far. Still don't have a He-Man one in person, which I want to check out, but between Skeletor, Stratos, and Beastman here, I think I do like the overall sculpt and look of this Beastman. The head looks great. I mean, even when I look at him next to the vintage figure, I think the sculpt looks pretty great on him. The paintwork is pretty nice. This figure is bright and vibrant. He's got that really great orange color with the blue furry loincloth, the red. All the colors on this guy really pop and look fantastic. Now, he also does include his weapon, which is his whip accessory. This is very cool. It, again, is very similar to the vintage one. However, the rope is much thicker this time. It's actually almost kind of feels like a yarn piece. It's not yarn. It's probably definitely like a little nylon rope or something. But you're going to see a little dangly rope there. So we can get this fit into Beastman's hand, just like this. And now we've got his little whip accessory on there as well. So, while we're holding him, why don't we go ahead and run down the articulation on this guy. It works just like the vintage figures. You got the head that can turn left and right. You got the arms that can move right there at the shoulders. One thing I will note is all the articulation's nice and tight on there. The legs move very similar to the vintage figure, and they do even have kind of like the little rubber band thing going on, just like the old ones. However, this time it's sort of like a little a rope on the inside, not a rubber band, kind of like a stretchy nylon rope in there. So that way we don't have to worry about the rubber band deteriorating and falling apart over time. And one of the other things I really like about the Giants is they have these little notches in the legs that clip in place in the little hip there. So that way the legs will lock solid. Let's see if I can get them to do it there. Pop the leg out too much. But the legs lock in place nice and tight. And the reason I like that, there we go, just like that. Here it clicks in, it locks in place so the figure doesn't have any problems standing. That's another thing that any of us that have the vintage Masters of the Universe figures are quite familiar with. They get really loose over the years, they get wobbly, so I actually feel like that is a design improvement on these Giants that definitely could have benefited the vintage action figures, so I really like that aspect. Now, the figure is lightweight. He's hollow for sure, but he still feels like a solid construction. So he doesn't feel cheap or flimsy. Like, the plastic feels fine. It's just hollow and lightweight, so it's not a solid figure. And the articulation's all nice and tight, like I said, functions well. And one of the other things I think is really neat that they worked in is he's got the power punch, which works really cool with his whip. Look at the way the whip flails around. I think it's neat that they actually worked in that vintage action feature on these Giants, and it works so well. So he's pretty great overall. I actually really like the articulation. I think the sculpt's great. The paintwork's great on this one. Definitely a fun Giants figure, and probably my favorite out of the bunch. All right, guys. It's comparison time. Just for fun, we got the vintage Beastman figure here, so you can see the size difference between the two, and also get some good close-up and side-by-side shots of the head sculpts, so that way you can see how similar and how it's slightly different, but it looks pretty good, actually. Definitely, I think, the best representation blown up out of any of the other figures in the Giants line. So there you go, my friends. There's a look at the giant Beastman figure from Mattel. Like I said, guys, this one's fun. I do really like the concept of this line. It's a bit pricey, so it's definitely a niche thing. Not everybody's going to want to spend $75 on a jumbo version of their vintage toys. I totally understand that. But for any of those completists out there, or anybody that just really enjoys the vintage line, I do still think these are really fun. And while there's been some really wonky things going on with the sculpts, especially like with He-Man, and even some weirdness with Skeletor, I think Beastman here is the best of the bunch for sure. So if you're a Beastman fan, that's a definite positive for you. Biggest downside, again, the packaging. I still wish I didn't have to tear up the packaging just to play with the toy. But I imagine a lot of you guys will probably keep a mint on card, and if that's the case, it should display pretty nicely in your collection. So Beastman is on sale right now in limited supply on MattyCollector.com. So happy hunting, my friends, and until next time. Wow. Ah. Yeah.